This is a podcast which does not shy away from difficult and vulnerable topics. The content is of an adult nature and we do swear at times.
Welcome to the Autistic Licence podcast. I'm Shauna and I'm in Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland.
I'm Leo in London.
We invite you to listen in on our conversations as we experiment with unmasking in an autistic space. We talk about what it means to discover we're autistic as adults, especially with established careers as therapists. We want people to know that autistic therapists exist and to broaden the conversation about neurodiversity. You're so welcome to join us, whoever you are and wherever in the world you are. We hope you'll find something of interest and connection here. Here we are.
I think I'm okay. That's the last thing you said.
Well, it's 15 minutes after our normal time, but I'm not in normal Tuesday mode.
No, you've had an interesting weekend.
I have. And I'm a bit distracted because this is the flower that Dusk was eating that made her sick.
Oh, you were saying last week.
And so I moved it into the cabin and now it started to grow again. She had about 3 of those. So I'm quite happy that over the weekend, whenever I was away, Ricky came out here to keep this watered. And I've just noticed it, that it has got 2 new flowers on it and some more
So Dusk has got green teeth, because what I remember you telling me last week was you were worried because Dusk, one of your 2 lovely, beautiful cats, had eaten a flower from one of your house plants and was sick. Yes. And you were really concerned that might be serious and maybe it was poisonous. But she's still with us and has had no further ill effects, and it's brought your plant back to life, it looks like.
Well, that didn't bring my plant back to life. Sometimes you say silly things, Leo.
No, not having that. Sometimes I say silly things.
Often you say silly things.
Okay. You mean that I say things that you want to qualify or correct?
That is exactly what I mean.
Yes. Please go ahead. Let's.
Dusk being sick and eating the flowers did not bring the plant back to life.
But it can. I mean, what I'm thinking of there is pruning,
Okay. Well, it wasn't needed because the plants had only just come and she's left the plant alone all through the winter.
Yes.
But whenever the flowers came, she felt it was a good idea to eat them. And she kind of ate them one at a time and then threw it up and then went back for more. She's not even supposed to be in that room. But she kept trying to get into that room to get at the flowers. So they had to be removed right out here to the cabin. And delightfully, it is actually growing in here because quite a lot of plants don't survive in here. Because there's not, I don't know why actually, but the other plants haven't been happy in here, but that one seems to be fine.
So your cabin is an outbuilding which you've had specially built to work in, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's a really, really lovely space. But I guess what you're talking about there is you've got one window. But I would have thought, I can imagine that's got lots of good daylight, that window. It's not blocked by anything. It doesn't get overlooked or anything.
No, I don't know what the problem is.
Okay.
But other plants haven't liked it very much in here. So, but this one seems to be happy enough.
Good.
Oh, how are you?
I'm okay. To add to I'm okay.
Oh, that's a turn up for the books.
That I've got a 2-word answer for a simple question.
Yeah. It is. What do you want to talk about?
I have no idea. I don't know.
But, this is all tied to autism, isn't it? And sometimes...
Oh, of course it is, and how we appear to the world.
How we appear to the... Yeah, and also how ununderstandable we are sometimes, that we seem to be able to do quite tricky, quite sophisticated, quite complicated things. We seem gifted in certain things, and then something very, very simple trips us up. So, this trips me up.
This is very good, actually. I like where that might go. That again, inconsistency, the word that keeps coming up. That we can seem... You said gifted there, in fact, and that is a word that's used. I
did. I threw that in there because I just wanted to. It's not really something that I call myself, but it can seem that way to some people. That where we are in some areas, actually, maybe... Well, and again, this is not about me, but I was watching, when I was away, I put the TV on, and it was just whatever, obviously it was whatever was on live, and this show called The Piano was on, which is Claudio. And there was an autistic guy playing the piano. He was amazing, and everybody thought he was amazing. And he sings in his own language as well, so
you don't mean that autistic. He's from another country. You mean that he has his own language. Yes, lovely.
Autism language.
Oh, lovely.
And
I'm going to have to watch that.
Being really, it was in London actually. It was taking place in Victoria Station, which is where we were. Lana and I were very excited because we watched it the day after we were there. Yes. And he was amazing, and he was seen to be amazing. And yet, he's had lots of challenges, lots of difficulties, lots of misunderstanding throughout his life. And yet, in terms of piano, in terms of all of that, what he can do with his voice, he's phenomenal. And I'm not saying, I don't actually have anything like that, and I'm not saying that all autistic people do, but sometimes there are some things that people looking on can see are just not average at all, and are actually quite exceptional. And so that's why I use that word, not that I buy into this idea that we have superpowers or...
Well, and it takes you back to that horrible phrase, idiot savant, or,
I don't mean to perpetuate
of course
anything like that.
No, I know you don't, but these things do highlight, even though they may be unusual in their extremes, they highlight this inconsistency thing and how that does come back to a lot of us, regardless of the gap between the highest ability and the lowest ability in all the different areas of our lives. It does come back to us in the neurotypical world as people saying, but I don't understand, if you can do this, then surely that is a piece of cake for you. And that really makes it very difficult to be vulnerable or to find certain things difficult.
Yes.
And to ask for help more than anything.
Yes.
And I think the thing that I hear most, and I certainly experienced myself, was in education. You're clearly bright. Why can't you just buckle down and do the work? Apply yourself. There you go. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Why can't you apply yourself? You're clearly bright.
Yes, you were seen to be bright. I wasn't seen to be bright. I was underestimated, which is interesting too. It can go both ways.
And and that's kind of doubly or maybe even triply incongruent somehow, because as you're going to argue this point, and I don't know how we define terms, but I believe you to be much brighter than me, and I do, and certainly in fact you definitely did better academically. Than I did or have ever done.
Yeah.
Well, and you must have had, but you also need the capacity and ability to learn things, repeat them out, and pass exams and excel. And go on.
The way that all those things are designed, though, you can develop systems for getting things into your head and regurgitating them, and you don't actually know the things. Whereas you never actually bought into the system to prove that you knew the things until
Well,
you became an adult. Until you became an adult, and then you joined Mensa, which I would not be able to join Mensa. So,
well, you absolutely don't know that, and it was.
No, I do, because I don't know those kind of things.
But what do you think? That's see, it's not. I never like talking about this, but it is important. It is relevant.
It is relevant.
Me being a Mensan is a direct result of me being assessed for my neurodivergences, and that an IQ number came out of that assessment, which was genuinely an enormous surprise to me. And I would never have thought of myself that way, but B, I would never have even been interested in trying because to me, I would have thought, well, that is about knowing things, and it's not. It's about spotting patterns. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. And I mean, no, I don't mean to discount anything by saying that's all it is, but I found in that particular environment of my assessment that I was able to go through those tests. Also, really, really importantly, I didn't know that that's what was happening. Yeah. I was doing some psychometric tests and I had no idea what they were measuring, or that was going to come out with a number. If I had, then I think I would have just bottled it completely and doubted everything I was saying. But because I was just going on instinct and I was in a lovely one-to-one environment, as most people would do it, they might sit at home and do something online, or they might sit in a hall with other people and with, like in an exam, which I did very, very badly at. But yeah, about so when you say I don't know the things, I don't think that's relevant. I mean, I don't think any of it's relevant anyway.
It is relevant to autism, and it is relevant to you being recognised for the type of intelligence that you have, which obviously, like the kind of very general, he's bright kind of was seen whenever you were younger, but you were also completely missed. And then you kind of opted yourself out.
I'm smiling there because your accent made me mishear you in one word there. When you said missed, it sounded like messed, and I thought, well, actually, it's both those things. I was messed and missed.
You messed? You got it?
I thought you were going to say like messed up or something like that kind.
But you were messed. Nobody could see.
Yeah.
And then you withdrew and all of that kind of stuff. And I guess then you didn't know how to try, and no one was encouraging you, and the environment wasn't helpful, and the whole era... They wouldn't have known what to do. No, with you.
No, and I don't. All they could see was this again, coming back to it, contradiction of somebody who could speak up and spot a thing that other people weren't spotting, but then completely failed to produce any work that kind of proved the academic rigour, such as it was in the 1970s at school. Whereas you, to come back to what you were saying before, and you talk about playing the system, which I get, but I don't think it discounts, brightness and there's all kinds of ways that we could define that, aren't there?
It just wasn't something that grabbed my attention. It was something that I did to remain under the radar. I went to grammar school, and at grammar school you have to perform in these exams and then you can be invisible. So that's what I did. And the exams were predictable to me, to everyone. If you could see patterns, I guess. I guess if you could see patterns. I knew how to be efficient in preparing myself. And as I've said before in other recordings, that didn't mean that I attended classes or anything like that. I bought study guides, and because I knew what was going to come up in the exams, and I taught myself. And the teachers didn't know what I could do. So obviously I had the self-directed autonomy as well to teach myself. I mean, I'm talking A-level standard here. I'm obviously not saying I taught myself when I was 12. But, by the time I got to that stage, I was very good at getting exams and knowing what I needed. The smallest, most efficient amount that I needed to know to pass the exams. And that's what I did, and that's what I was focused on. I had a 8-week revision plan, and I did it consistently, and I sat the exams. That's, so I guess it is autistic.
Well, here's another inconsistency then, or an incongruity, the thing that doesn't make sense, like between us and comparing between us, is I confounded expectations in a negative way.
Yeah.
You seem very bright, but your work is terrible and you're in the bottom set for everything.
Yes.
Set music. And you must have had the opposite reaction then. You were keeping yourself under the radar. From what you say, you weren't glowing brightly.
No, not at all.
And yet you did really, really well.
Yeah.
In terms of measures. And that must have also confounded expectations. And I wonder, did you get feedback about that?
Well, no, because when you finish your A-levels, you've left school.
Oh, I see what you mean. Of course.
So it's like...
Oh, yeah, if you're talking about A-levels, that's true. They did well. Oh, they've gone.
Yeah, we missed another statistic there for Oxford and Cambridge because we didn't pick her up.
That's
Who the fuck is she? She did better than some of our Oxford and Cambridge candidates.
Yes. But that's a serious point.
Yeah, but that's what it would have been like. I guess, I did well in my GCSEs as well, but it wouldn't have been such a difference maybe, or so noticeable, but it was a huge school as well. They need some people to fly under the radar, they need that. So it would have suited them as well. But yeah, there was no dialogue or anything afterwards. There was never any feedback around it. Not that I would have believed them or respected them in any case. By then I was so checked out from any adult's opinions of me. So it just wouldn't have been very meaningful.
You mentioned before, me being missed, which, is such a common late diagnosis word, isn't it? And I wonder that it's another kind of sidetrack to what we're talking about here, which is education and how well we did or didn't do compared to expectations or what was going on underneath. It also makes me wonder when we talk about being missed at school about how about behaviours, about how we seemed. Did I seem to be with the right pair of eyes and awareness to be an autistic child? And actually, I think I did. When I look back, all kinds of things, all kinds of eccentricities, and the people that I hung out with. Yeah, that was odd. I didn't go under the radar at all. No. I was loud. I was a show off in some ways. I was entertaining.
You would have driven me mad.
Yeah. And well, that's what I'm thinking about. Again, I'm comparing you and me, and I know that in most of these comparisons you could draw a gendered comparison as well that we fit in with.
We really do. You were an autistic boy.
I was an autistic Boy. You were an under the radar, invisible autistic girl. Yes. Yeah. So I'm just wondering what you make of how you were as an autistic child. Invisible, I assume, to others. Were there any, I love that meme of the mother with the boy and the man saying, but he doesn't look autistic. And she says, Rupert, please do an autism for the nice man. I really like, just wondering what you might have, what was visible about you, do you think, if anything?
Nothing was visible because I hid it.
Exactly.
I don't understand.
I think that's the point. Well, I think that's the point. Yeah.
Nothing was visible, but if you had have looked underneath and you could have followed me home, you might have seen where my New Kids on the Block obsession was off the scales, and my room and, things like that. You could have seen the autism there. The degree of those kind of interests would have been really, really noticeable. In my autism assessment, it was really easy to find the things from my memory.
Right.
But I guess at school wouldn't have seen those kind of things, and by the time I got to be a teenager, I was I did dissociation and carefree masking so well that you wouldn't have seen the anxiety. As a child, you would have seen the anxiety.
Yes.
And, but by that stage, you wouldn't have seen that. But it was still there, but it was I was, doing that kind of, the masking so well. But as a child, it would have been really, really clear in like early days of preschool and the beginning of school and things like that, and my anxiety and my insistence on things being the way that I wanted them to be in my learning. It got easier and easier as I got more self-directed in my learning, because I could just, teach myself and find my own systems. It is about systems, isn't it? And it depends on the subject, everything. How you can compartmentalize that in your own mind and work out the best way. And then teachers love it when you're self-directed and you do your own revision.
I've hit a fork in the road here, so there's two completely different directions that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
So one is, you are in this position that I am not. You're a parent, and you're a parent of an autistic child, and you're a parent of an autistic daughter specifically. So there are probably some really lovely, interesting comparisons about her at the age she is, mid-teens, and how you were then, which is some of what you're talking about now. And how different that visibility might have been, how different the masking, is or isn't. That's one branch. So there's that over there. And then I'm just thinking about how you are now in the world as a result of the kind of level of quiet achievement that you had when you were younger academically. But now you are we both are, we're in a brain profession. It's all about it's thinking. It's not and then there's creativity in there for sure, but it's a spotting patterns thing. It's formulating conversations, but also we're doing this, and you now are, and you've done this in other forms as well anyway, spoken publicly, been more prominent in a way that you clearly talk about being very uncomfortable with when you were younger. I think I'll need to stop that there, because that's just getting more and more and more detailed. It's like a fractal. It's just branching off and branching off and branching off.
Oh, what a wonderful word. Yeah.
I'm going to leave all of that there and see where you go with it. But if you want me to prod, I'll try.
Well, where I am is the fractals and all of the flowers that you like to take pictures of, and just understanding your fractals and how you see that and how significant that is for you.
Oh, do you know what? Me using the word fractals, which you've just picked up on, is simply because I was thinking of the thoughts branching off and branching off and branching off. But I'd never made two connections there. One, you're right, with this my current kind of spin around biological structure in flowers, and because I take nice photos of those things and I like posting them, but also just fractals as a metaphor and an illustration of certain kinds of neurodivergent thought patterns and processes. Wow. Because I haven't thought about fractals were a big thing, like 20 years ago, when computers were able to generate really beautiful little animations that you could.
I don't know. I didn't know the word 20 years ago.
Do you think? I don't know. I haven't thought about them as visuals for a long time. Seems to me there's some symbolism in there anyway.
Yeah. I guess that I came across them probably through nervous system kind of training. So Deb Dana stuff, like she would have taught us about things like that, and how, looking at things like that caused a calming.
Oh, wow. The interconnectedness of all things, because as you know, I'm going to do a Deb Dana training in just over a week. Goodness.
That's right. But there's loads of things that bring me back to that time that I spent training with her. It's a very interesting thing, because it's got so much relevance in so many areas of life. So I have no idea what so I think you were inviting me to talk about what it's like to parent a daughter who has not been under the radar and has always kind of been autistic.
Yes.
Which is very different. And actually, we talk about that, me and Lana talk about that, and we're very different. You know, we're not the same type of autistic person anyway. But then again, she was brought up very differently and wasn't under the radar.
No.
But we have there's very, very different kind of aspects. And she's very like you, as we know. So sometimes...
Would you give some examples just for people who haven't heard that comparison before? And also for my own interest and curiosity.
Actually, I don't know of any examples, but she really benefits from our friendship because she gets more understanding because of what you tell me. And then I say, oh, Leah's like that too. So now I understand why you're doing that really annoying thing to me.
I hope it works both ways.
Well, you benefit from her as well.
That's what I mean.
Although sometimes you feel jealous as well because she gets the things, you notice that she gets the things that you would have benefited from.
Just from life and being in 15 now as opposed to 15 in 1981. Yeah.
Wow, yes. But also, like, even through school and education, like, because, you know, even just things like getting extra time and, you know, things like that you didn't have. So I think that you were going down that angle. I'm not too interested in talking anymore about that. But then there was another. Remember, you said you were in 2 branches.
So the other one that was the one that really exploded into fractals. And I do want to come back to fractals actually, just as I don't know, we'll see. But I've already written that down just to link something in the show notes about fractals because I think there's a lot there that's very, very autistic. About you and your experience of being, I'm going to say gifted because you use that word in certain areas, but being also very much under the radar. But now you are, you know, you're very outward in your work. That's very outward. You don't sit at a desk, you know, quietly getting on with something. This is all about at least two-way communication. And then doing this, talking publicly, being very open. I suppose what I'm thinking is in terms of that side of it being more external facing, I've had more training, if you like, through living my life.
Done it. Yeah,
as a more of I don't mean professionally necessarily, but I mean just as an extrovert person.
You've been a performer.
Yes.
And you've used your voice. You've done radio.
But in my childhood as well. You know, being someone who was, you know, praised and, you know, had a lot of attention. And, you know, I now look back on that and think about whether or not I enjoyed that attention. And, you know, that's a very, very mixed bag. But at the time, my experience was that it was a nice thing. Yeah. Whereas you, and again, I know there are gender stereotypes and also neurotype gender stereotypes at work here. As you said, you know, wanted to fly under the radar, wanted to keep your head down. So there's much more, as I see it, at least superficially, and much more of a transformation that you would have experienced into adulthood or later adulthood, you know, up to the present day. In terms of comfort, discomfort, I don't know.
I think I'm still like that. See, I still, like, you know, I'm still incredibly shy. And like we said on a recent one, like I don't tell anyone about the podcast. This is still being done in private and in secret.
And that is actually, and this goes
Which I always did, if you think about it. I always did training courses and therapy sessions in private. So, like, this is obviously taking more of a risk because people can choose to listen to it. So there's a wider audience. But in terms of kind of my experience of how I live my life, I'm still very much undercover.
And that, harks back to that.
I'm still shy, really shy and introverted. Like, we're very different in that.
I suppose so. And because, like a lot of relationships, I suppose anyway, generally, you know, we only know each other in the context of each other. So I don't experience you as shy because you're not shy when we speak and never have been. So I don't, we don't get to see that. And you're right, in the work as well, that's another absolutely unique thing about one-to-one therapy is nobody ever sees you work. You never see anyone else work unless they're doing some kind of demo publicly. It's a very odd situation in that respect. So all your feedback has to come back from the people that we work with.
Can we go down the track that my mind is going down?
Always.
Not true, always. But on this occasion, can we do that?
Yeah, please do.
I was just thinking about, because we were travelling over the weekend, me and Lana. We've just been away because she did some GCSE modules, which finished, and we took the opportunity to go away. And now she's got some school exams, but she had like 3 weeks of study leave, so it all worked out. So the way I kind of felt the need to explain that, nobody cares. We were away at the weekend. And
that's really important, because we were just talking about our experiences in education, and here's Lana doing exams right now.
Yeah, I know, but I just realised that nobody needs all of that information, and I over-explain all the time. So anyway, that's why we were away.
And all of our listeners.
That's why we were away. We were away Friday to Monday,
yes.
And so I was wearing my lanyard. She doesn't wear a lanyard anymore.
This is the sunflower lanyard that kind of marks us out as invisibly disabled.
Yeah, as visibly disabled. Yeah, okay, but also as very visible. But my main point was I was wearing my lanyard. Lana nowadays doesn't want a lanyard. She doesn't want to be seen as visibly autistic. But the relevant thing is that it was interesting that I guess she was with me with the lanyard, and I guess it was then kind of seen that I was the visible one rather than her. So it wasn't like I was looking after a child who needed extra support. It was like she was looking after me. Now, I'm sure if anybody was looking on, they would see we were as bad as each other. But in terms of how challenged we were about the lack of signage and the lack of anybody helping us and everything that was happening. But yeah, that is kind of interesting, being the kind of visible one.
And this compares really nicely, if you're listening and you want to go back to the episode called Airports and Smells, where I talked about my experience on exactly the same flight, in fact, or exactly the same journey, BA, Heathrow Terminal 5. And that, I'm so lucky that I had the very positive set of experiences that I had, because that was the first day I ever wore my lanyard. And if I'd have encountered what you encountered yesterday, that would have been it. I would have never, I would have thought that's caused more trouble than it's saved me.
Yes.
And I doubt if I'd have gone back, that would have destroyed my confidence in being visible in that way. So
I've had so many good experiences in other airports that
I wasn't trying to redress a balance there. I'm just saying that,
no, I can see how I could have done that to you. And if that had, because I didn't need my lanyard in other contexts. I know airports I do, and it was really interesting. I hadn't prepared to put it on, but as soon as we stepped into that terminal, we looked at each other, and I was like, okay, time for the lanyard. Because it that environment I just can't cope with. But it was so hard, I think, because I was expecting to be treated with kindness, because I normally am.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just wasn't, like, from one thing after another. Yeah. And in fact, I was treated very badly on a couple of times, where it was like I actually got a harder time.
Yeah.
Like, it just, yeah.
But you're right, it can be worse to fail to get the help than not even to be in line for it in the first place. Because, without the lanyard, just joining the regular queues and all of that, it's horribly stressful. It's too hot. There's claustrophobia. There's loads and loads of waiting. But you're passive in all of that. Whereas if you ask for help in whatever way, whether that's by actually asking somebody or wearing the lanyard or whatever, or going to a particular area, what you might have to deal with there, what you had to deal with, was being challenged and then having to explain yourself.
Yeah.
That's active, and that's a huge ask and can be really harmful.
But you know what's just hit me is, you know, Lana reached a stage last year. I guess it was dawning on her and me for a couple of years where being visible wasn't helping anymore. So school were attempting to, in inverted commas, help her and getting it wrong so many times that it was doing more harm than good. So even though she statemented and had funding in place for assistance, school was working from a very outdated pathologizing model and weren't working in partnership with me and weren't listening to me or her. And I tried to address so many times on her behalf, and we had a real line in the sand at her transition annual review, which was last year, and basically we said, look, this is doing more harm than good. You know, we don't want your help anymore. Lana doesn't want your help anymore, which was really hard for me because, you know, the help had been so good for her in primary school and as a younger child. I'm so glad we had it there, and they worked in partnership with me and all of that. You know, because it became so irrelevant and actually embarrassing to her, like the kinds of things that they wanted to, in inverted commas, assist her with, were just singling her out and giving her accommodations, in inverted commas, that she didn't need, and missing what we were actually asking for, and all of that kind of thing. Like it really did not pay to be visible. I think it might be helpful to sort of come back round again to I suppose what I'm referring to is there's some things that I can struggle through. There's some things that I absolutely will not stop asking for help for. And there's other things that I don't actually need help for, you know? So I think that's kind of maybe part of what we've been addressing in this episode, where, you know, we can confuse people because somebody might think, oh goodness, you can't even manage your way around an airport, or you can't manage your way around a hospital, so you must not be able to work, you must not be able to think clearly, you must not be able to I don't know what else somebody might think, like you must not be able to
look after people's mental health.
You know,
in
like
the therapeutic relationship,
get yourself places on time. You might not be able to turn up for appointments. You might not, you know, might not be able to drive. You know, all sorts of things that people might put alongside this one bit of information. And I think that's what we're kind of challenging, the idea that our profiles as autistic people are much more complicated, and
that's a very nice completion of a circle there, because what we were talking about when we first started talking around spiky profiles, the inconsistencies was the other way around. Surely if you're so good at this and so good at that, then you must be able to do that and X and Y and Z. And now also this is the flip side of that.
Yeah.
That just because we can't cope with X, Y and Z does not mean that we can't be very good A's, B's and C's. So we've been talking a lot about highs and lows of ability and skill and coping and all of those things that make up the spiky profile of a neurodivergent person. And I suppose because of the nature of how we talk about these things, we've probably erred towards the negatives, the lower points. So what are our high points? What is it about us having spiky profiles that benefits us? I'll start. I think
No, you've just introduced that word, spiky profiles. So that has never been introduced in this recording. So I think that we probably need to
contextualize
a little bit.
Okay.
So, are you going to take
over?
No,
if you want to do... No, because it is usually me who jumps in with that. Let me leave you with that. I'm all ears.
So, I guess to introduce the concept that in years gone by and in the kind of medicalised framework, I suppose, of autism, it was seen that people would be either high functioning or low functioning, and the spectrum was seen to be more kind of linear. But I guess that it's becoming more known that we're very spiky, and we have things like spiky. If you imagine a circle with spikes coming out of it at different kind of percentages, the triangles of the spikes for different kind of skill sets. So
in that model, the circle is divided into segments that are skills or abilities, and okay. you would sorry, I know it's a genuine question because I have a different model of a spiky profile, which is more a bar chart version.
Oh, isn't that interesting? The only thing I can that's whenever I hear the word spiky profiles, I see that picture of a whale. I guess we'll just have to put a link in the show notes to it. But I guess that idea that, yes, there would be certain things where the segments or the bar charts, as you're saying, would be fuller, where things that are just not a problem to us. And then there would be other things that are much less full. Or I guess maybe the other way around. I don't know. But it's the idea that it's not consistent and balanced across all of the domains. So that's something that might sound like if you can, like you were saying at the start of this, if you can do one thing, you'll absolutely be able to do this thing because it's so much simpler. But actually that's a very non-autistic way of seeing it, because often we can't do the things that people think are simple, but we can do things that other people might struggle with or might be surprised at, and that's what we were talking about at the start with sometimes education or people with particular skills.
So your description there of the circular model of a profile, you are right actually to bring that up in this context, because that, as I understand it, is usually how an autistic spiky profile is mapped.
Okay.
Whereas what I first came across, which was in my own assessment as a spiky profile, was a list of kind of brain functions, things like verbal reasoning and that kind of thing. And that's kind of drawn out as a bar chart, but in both cases, I think what you're expecting from a neurotypical average is for all of those things to be equal. That's how it's calibrated. And what you find as a definition of neurodivergence is variance within those qualities, let's call them, or abilities or skills or functions, whatever. So I will put a link in. And what was fascinating to me because my psychologist had written a book of kind of little case studies which didn't include autism, because this was about dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, etc. And for each of these little case studies, I'll put a link to the book as well, because it really is a lovely, accessible way to understand neurodiversity. He published the spiky profile typical for that neurodiversion. So when I looked at mine, because mine was actually published printed as a bar graph at the end of my assessment, I could put it over the one for ADHD and it just matched exactly the high and low points. Not necessarily the numbers exactly, but where it was high and where it was low exactly matched my ADHD profile. And that's fascinating. But it's not very sophisticated in that it lists 5, 6, 7, I can't remember, aspects of brain function, essentially. Whereas the autism one needs to be a circular diagram because it has more segments, I believe. And It's a lot more sophisticated. And obviously, you're not going to have all autistic people having the same spiky profile. That's the point.
Not at all.
If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
Yeah. Not at all. But it's also just trying to get away from that thing of, high functioning, low functioning, where on different days, actually, certain things we might be able to do, and then on another day, we might not be able to do it, as well as the more generalised things that there's just some stuff that we struggle with. And, it's not a case of trying to teach us the skills to do that thing. We'll just not be able to do it. And then there's other things that when we go into a hyper-focused kind of state, we seem to be able to do quite effortlessly.
Yes. I don't know if this is going to come out on the recording, but the police helicopter that passes over my house most evenings is just either doing its patrol or on the way to catch some bad people. I don't know, but I don't mind it. I've got my window open and I don't mind, as you know, the sound of aircraft and helicopter. Well, helicopters are aircraft. Okay. Close that pathway down. That's getting too specific. So my question, now we know what a spiky profile is in this context, then we do tend to, because it's the nature of these conversations that obviously we think of the difficulties that we have. That tends to be prominent. Sometimes we do talk about the lovely parts of being an autistic person. I mean, actually, probably in my current experience, now I'm all aware and I've designed my life around it, then most of those aspects actually for me are positive, but we tend to talk about the ones that we struggle with more often. And I wonder then if, as we're talking about the spikiness of our profiles, the highs and lows, what the highs might be.
Yeah, I can't make that leap, I'm afraid. You'll have to just carry on with whatever you were going to say.
Oh, actually, I'd thought of something else instead, actually, along the way. So one of the things I was thinking of was how having a dual diagnosis of ADHD and being autistic is that how they support each other, and one kind of steps in front of the other when it's actually needed. And so, for example, for somebody, this was the example I've probably spoken about before that my psychologist gave of being a musician, whereas there are aspects of that require obsessive interest and practice, and you get your Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours in, and that's where being autistic is a boon, because
what is that thing you just referred to?
The 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so Malcolm Gladwell's book, oh God, I've got to look it up now because I'm going to want to name check it and I get two of his books muddled up. Which is the 10,000 Outliers. So in Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers book, he talks about athletes, I think, originally, because he was an athlete, about how that's the number he's come up with of the number of hours it takes to get to be the best at something, or to reach your full potential at something.
Okay.
And that could be a talent, that could be, in his case, a level of physical fitness and competitiveness. That you get your 10,000 hours in, then you are that thing, and you are, in the elite of that thing. So, if you want to be a virtuoso something musician, then obviously you need whatever talent is, but you also need to practice. And so being autistic helps that with that kind of, if you happen to have a degree of monotropism or monotropism in the field that you're interested in, that will get you your 10,000 hours. However, what it's probably going to get away with, in the way of stereotypically, might be performance, might be being the centre of attention, might be the unexpected or the unknown. How is this going to go live? Stage fright, that kind of thing. And that's where ADHD, if you have that aspect to you as well, can step in and do the performance. And so that's a really nice kind of boon. And in this case, I'm talking, as I say, about a dual diagnosis, I suppose, and having both those aspects. What that made sense of for me as an illustration is I always struggled when I saw performers live or on TV or whatever, and particularly front people, so singers usually, when they would appear in the song, in the performance itself, to get really, genuinely lost and emotional and tough. And then at the end, as the audience might, applaud, it's almost like they woke up out of some kind of reverie and suddenly went all shy. And I never used to buy that. I used to think, oh, come off it. You just stood in front of 5,000 people and emoted your heart out, and now you're pretending to be all modest and shy. But I completely recontextualize that now, and I can see that as the transition between those two ways of being. The ADHD thing going, okay, the performance is over, my thrill is over, and stepping back, and the autism kind of stepping back up and going, oh my God, there's 5,000 people in front of me, get me out of here. Wow. That's my illustration of that.
So, getting back to where we were...
I know what the edit notes are going to look like. Just cut that whole shit out of our performance.
I am really, really lost. Okay.
Okay. Let's say goodbye then.
Okay, thank you for being with us.
Thank you ever so much.
Bye-bye.
See you again next time. Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you again next time. We won't see you again next time.
Oh, deja vu. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Autistic License podcast. You can connect with us via Instagram, Facebook at autisticlicense.com, or by email at autisticlicense@gmail.com. And we spell license the British way, LICENCE. We also have a thriving Facebook community. Search for Autistic License Shauna and Leo, or click on the link in the show notes.